If I think of when I started real estate, I was taught this, chase, convince, close, chase, convince, close, always be closing, the ABCs. And I thought that doesn't really resonate with me, even though it works. But I thought, how do I reverse engineer this? How do I create something that is much more meaningful to them as well as to me? And so I developed this philosophy of sales for myself.
I'm Mark Cook, president of Windfall Partners. We get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams after turnarounds as chief executive. The largest ever studies of award-winning leaders, a New York Times bestseller, and 5-star keynotes. I've coached 4,000 client wins at top brands. My Bold Encounters is an advanced system for leading. First, powerful steps on a path forward. Second, problem-solving skills that beat obstacles fast. Now, lead with Bold Encounters today.
Welcome to Bold Encounters today. I have with me Randy Dyck, and he is part of the EXP Real Estate Network. And I got attracted to inviting Randy because he is several things. He's not just an expert at how and the logistics of selling real estate, but he has amassed a team of 650 people in a very entrepreneurial way, in an entrepreneurial setting that they have. And that's just amazing to me. The orchestration of that many people in a very independent entrepreneurial setting is a very difficult thing, much more difficult than a corporate setting, I think. He's an author, he's a speaker. He talks to a lot of real estate people on how to sell more real estate and how to put people in homes that they love and cherish forever as a family, as individuals. And so I'm thrilled to have you, Randy. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to ask you a few things. Let me tell you what attracted this episode to me. A few years ago, went up to Vancouver for the first time. I've been to Toronto a lot, so I was expecting some more Canada like that. And oh my word, in the middle of July, the sun was shining. I swam at both pools on either side of the bay. It was so warm that I swam in the ocean in the bay. And then I got on a bike and rode around. It's like a miniature, cleaner San Francisco. It's just like an amazing set of geographies that are so contrasting, and the bridge, and it's a big green bridge, not a red bridge, and it's smaller and more quaint and doable. And I got done with all that. I had saved myself one day before an engagement with a company up there, a set of companies actually. And I was getting home on time so I could get up and be ready. And all of a sudden, at the top of the hill above the bay, this gorgeous setting, they're having a movie night. And there's 300 Canadians up there getting ready to watch Dumb and Dumber. And I hadn't seen it. I guess I'm that dumb. And after decades of it being out and popular, they were watching, and we were all laughing together. And I snuck out of there at 11 to get home on time. I love Vancouver. So you moved up there how long ago?
Well, about 40 years ago, I moved from a small cowboy town in southern Alberta, just north of the Montana border, called Pincher Creek, Alberta. And I came out to the Vancouver area for college. And gosh, I was blown away just like you. I've never been to the West Coast, which I call the West Coast, the left coast, the best coast. And I just fell in love with the area too. And then I fell in love with a beautiful girl. And, the rest is history. I've never moved back. I've been here ever since.
So it was more the girl than the movie nights, and that makes sense. But
Yes.
I live in
You
Salt
should have
Lake
found a
City.
girl. You might have stayed.
Yeah, probably not. I was married. Hopefully I wouldn't have. But I live in Salt Lake City. Also, is behind me for now. The also a very amazing geography. But wow, that was fun. So we're sibling cities in a way because of the Olympics and such.
Yes.
Another reason that I really liked the idea of talking to you is two other things. First of all, I've already mentioned the team orchestration. Orchestration is my favorite word for leadership because You're bringing the empty cup, as one of my recent AI experts in his life philosophy from the East, said you're always bringing a cup of as a leader and having them fill it. So they're fairly independent in the best results teams, which fits kind of your model in what you do in real estate and how you manage these 650, I would assume, fairly entrepreneurial people themselves. So that was exciting to me. And then finally, we're going to get to your return on life activities and philosophies at the end. But before we get into all of the businessy and the leadership and the career stuff, I want to hear your personal story for a second. There's probably been a really difficult time you've had in life. And before we get to that, I'd like to put that off for just a second and hear what it was like before that. Where were you? What were you doing? Life was pretty good. Tell us about that part of your life.
Well, I am writing a book about that, a little bit about that. There's some pieces of that, so excited to share that. But, I grew up in that small town in southern Alberta on a farm. We had grain and cattle, and life was amazing. I'm a twin as well, so I have a twin brother, and we just had the best time growing up. And everything was a race. If you're a twin, you'll understand this. You get very competitive because racing to the bus stop, racing to this, doing that, everything is competitive. And so I had just a magical uh, childhood and great parents and just a great setting to grow up and become, a little human being. At 14, I had a major adversity happen in my life. And if you want me to share that,
Oh, well, before you share that, I want to ask you, because yes, that's you're the inciting incident probably in your life, it sounds like. But before you share that, I want to ask you a fairly random question about twins. So you didn't marry identical twin sisters, did you?
we did not marry identical twin sisters, but we have a twin thing that is pretty incredible. We know each other's feelings. We feel each other's feelings.
Wow.
There's a moment in my life, in his life, that he had a near death experience,
Oh.
and I was 1,400 miles away, and I knew that he was in that place. Pretty crazy. I had
Mm.
no idea. So this is before cell phones. This is before, the way we communicate today, which is just at a flash. But I was at a school here in the Vancouver area. He was in Winnipeg, which is just, North Dakota, north of North Dakota there. And we were both playing hockey the same day. We both had a hockey injury the same day.
Mm.
Mine was a broken finger, which is still kind of gimped,
Ouch.
but he shattered his leg, which almost killed him. And I had no idea this was going on. And I said to my roommate, I think I'm going to die tonight.
Mm.
It feels like I'm going to die. And I couldn't figure out why from a broken finger. I've broken 19 bones in my body. I know what a broken bone's like, but
Dear.
this felt different. And I said, gosh, I feel horrible. It's like I'm going to die. Little did I know, the next day, late in the afternoon, the payphone at the end of the dorm rings, and this guy comes running down the hall and says, you got to answer the phone. Your dad's on the phone. It's really, really important. So I like crawl out of bed because I feel like I'm dying. And I pick up the phone, and then my dad explains that my twin brother, Gerald, is, fighting for his life.
Wow. So what?
Isn't that crazy?
That is so crazy and so sad that he shattered his leg. And I know it's a long time ago, but that's a seriously dramatic thing. What
Mm.
I got to ask you a couple other things. So, what did it feel? You felt like you were dying generally, but what does that feel like? What were you feeling?
Yeah, that's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me what that felt like. I've explained and shared this story many times, but nobody's ever asked me what did it feel like. But it was just like I I just couldn't find the energy to do anything other than just lay there, and it was just like I was heavy sorrow, empathy, not understanding what was happening. Just I don't know, the worst feeling I could ever feel. And I felt a lot of things, but it was just such a heavy feeling I was feeling.
Mm.
Yeah.
How did you break so many bones? Were you breaking them in hockey too, or what? What is this thing about
Yeah,
breaking bones?
well,
Being a twin, is that how you break bones? Or
we lived pretty fast. Like we chased the sun pretty hard, and so whether it be motorcycles or hockey or skiing or just living life full out, full throttle.
love it. Wow, wow. Very challenging, very difficult, sometimes near death, but a terrific outdoor, beautiful environment you grew up in. So, what was the most difficult thing you've ever faced in
Hmm.
your career or your personal life that ended up affecting people around you and people you lead and such in your career?
Well, there's many things, but a couple of the huge crucibles in my life. Number one, at 14, again, here we are. My twin
Mm.
and I were like ripping around. And, anyways, one thing led to another. I was on a motorcycle and I hit a building
Oh,
head on and torpedoed off the building, helmetless,
oh,
and woke up paralyzed from the neck down. So that was very, very challenging time for me. It was what I call an adverse moment, an underdog moment, which is what I'm writing about, the underdog DNA
mm,
and about adversity. But that taught me so much about myself. And, if I could go back, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't
mm.
change it because what I am today is because of those moments. And that was one of those really large adversity moments or underdog moments that shaped and formed me and made me the man that I am today.
I don't want to get too gritty, but we've got to know some of the details of this. Like I've never heard of someone flying off a motorcycle without a helmet on a building. So
Yeah.
just go through the little mini step by steps of that actual event. Like what are you saying?
Well, we had a special event happening at our church that night, and my dad said, "Get that skateboard ramp off the driveway. It's an ugly eyesore." And we said, "Okay," and we loaded it up on the pickup truck. And then, like anything that we did together, my twin and I, it was a race. We didn't even have to say, "Are you racing?" It was just a known thing. So he jumped in the truck. I jumped on the motorcycle, and we were going to race to the point where we were going to drop off this skateboard ramp. And we were racing, and one thing led to another, and I, you know, found myself hitting a building unexpectedly, of course, and torpedoing off of the motorcycle into the building head first. And I woke up laying on the ground with my hands beside my head like this. And my twin comes over, and Jared says to me, "Look what you did to the motorcycle. You wrecked our motorcycle."
Only a
Because we
twin would
shared
say that.
and as twins, you share a lot of things. So we shared this one motorcycle, like it's my turn. No, it's your turn. It's my turn. No, it's your turn. And so, anyways, he was upset that I'd wrecked the motorcycle, but I said, I can't get up. I
Hmm.
can't get up. Can you help me up? And he started picking up my arm, and I said, no, no, don't do that. Go get help. And don't ask me why I said that. Normally we would just pick each other up and carry on, right?
Yeah.
Um, but anyways, my dad rushed out from the home in a robe of all things because he was getting ready to go to church,
Hmm.
and one thing led to another. But anyways, there he is standing over top of me in a robe, and he's asking me questions. Can you move this? Can you do that? And of course, it was no, 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 all the way through those questions. And so, thankfully, he recognized there was a neck injury and then took care of that, and stabilized my neck. Um, Shipped to a hospital, of course. Spent a couple months in a hospital in a head halo and traction, and then of course surgery to fuse three vertebrae, C345. Your top
Oh,
vertebrae is C1, so 3, 4, 5 are still wired solid to this day. But I do have fairly good mobility still, and the beautiful thing is I didn't do the damage to the spinal cord that would permanently leave me paralyzed. And so over the course of those 2 months, I started getting more and more of my feeling back. And when I left the hospital, I was walking very slow. I could walk about 50 feet and I'd need a rest. But again, here's where my twin came into play. he was my physiotherapist.
Mm.
I left the hospital, and this is in the day that there just wasn't a lot of support. I had no appointments after I left the hospital. They just said, go home and we'll see you in a couple months.
Yeah.
But it was my physiotherapist twin brother that would continue to push me and make me better. And it took me a good year to kind of get everything functioning and working again. But here I am, and I went back to racing motorcycles and playing hockey and skiing, and I just live like every other individual today. And I
Unbelievable.
probably live at a higher level because I know what I could have lost.
Mm. Yeah.
And so that was one of my big adversities. And when I talk about in my book, the Underdog DNA is about stacking adversity,
Mm.
stacking adversity. So you build up your resilience shield. Because every time you have an adversity moment, you're building your resilience shield for that moment. And so that's the first one that really um, built up some adversity in my resilience shield.
Yeah. Well, before you get on to maybe a professional difficulty and your expertise that I'm going to ask you about, let me ask you about this a little bit. It's really interesting to me. So, why do you think it is that all of us seem to not recognize at a younger age that life is about what you just said? Like we think that, we pray for ease and comfort and we hope for riches and travel. And, we're always chasing the easy, wonderful, fun stuff that is neither lasting, fulfilling, and yet at some point it clicks and you realize that you do need to stack adversity to learn in this place we call Earth. So what is that? What's going on there, do you think?
Well, first off, we're all born in this beautiful country. Well, not all of us. There's maybe listeners that weren't
Yeah.
born in North America, but
Take it easy. I was a fan of Toronto and Canada, so be careful. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
yeah. But we in North America, first world countries, we're just so spoiled. We have so much gifted and given to us that I don't think we really understand what adversity is. And if you've ever seen somebody move into a country that's an immigrant that has nothing, you look at their work ethic, you look at what they're grateful for and the gratitude that they have for just being here. Yet we're not grateful for what we're given each and every day. So I think there's a little bit of that, what I call first world hangover, that we just think it's always going to be like this. And we kind of get that hangover experience.
Yeah.
And it sometimes takes us some really hard things, and then we have to work through them to see what's on the other side. And so I mentioned that earlier, that I wouldn't trade this neck experience knowing what I know today. In that moment, of course, I asked all the questions, why me? Why this? Why? Woe is me. But, when you work through it, you realize, oh man, I wouldn't be who I am without this.
Yeah.
Without this. And the next adversity, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, right?
Yeah. It's very
So,
true. Very true. One of my dear friends, one of the former episodes I have is he didn't get it back, and as he tells the story of falling off a 35-foot bridge and living, and he's one of the best people I know, and it's very complicated to talk about how he experiences life because I'm not in his head, even though I've interviewed him at length. But he talks like you do, even though he's on the other side, and you stacked him in different areas. It sounds like. Well, let's talk about some of your life's work. Like, we have family, and that's half of it. The other half is what we do commercially and try to make people's jobs and their daytime life better. And
mm,
also, in your case, get them a home. One of the reasons I got excited about real estate, even though I don't have a big real estate audience, is my father was a real estate agent. He was an entrepreneur. He had, like any entrepreneur, he had some tough times. And And yet, when he switched and started selling real estate, he worked so hard. I was only 13 watching him at the time, but he worked like I've never seen anyone work. He was selling houses all the time and doing open houses, and that was in addition to other life needs. And he made the $57 million club locally, which was the big thing. And he was top 1% in the whole region of the United States. So I just really have a fond. My two brothers, both my deceased brother and the one that's alive, are both real estate people. And so I'm not. I'm the one. I didn't belong in the real estate industry, I guess. So I'm very curious because you've done amazing things in real estate, and my audience, most of them are not in real estate. But we are very curious about the real estate world and what happens in your neck of the woods and how you sell better and what you do for people. Give us a minute of the essence of what it is. What is the fulfilling part of being a real estate agent? And then what is the top keys of success these days in being a great real estate person?
Well, what brings a lot of joy for me, anyways, and I'm going to just speak for myself, is helping people make one of the biggest decisions of their life, which is buying a home. That's generally one of their biggest decisions, and making sure that I've helped them find their forever home, if it's their forever home or their first home, but walking through their wants and the needs and making sure that that is taken care of. And many of us have more wants than we have needs. The needs are just a roof over our house, right?
Yeah.
A roof over our head, and then we put all the wants into that package. But there's a lot of joy in helping people have a home, and home is so essential to family. It's so essential to community. It's so essential to, your your belief system and how you function in the space that you're living in. So it's really important piece of one's life to have a roof over their heads. And so it's usually a very joyful experience, unlike, let's say, a dentist. Working in somebody's mouth is not so joyful, I would think. So I really get a lot of joy out of that. And then, of course, along the way, you help a lot of people create incredible wealth through real estate. It's also a wealth creator and a wealth builder. So not only are you helping them with their place of home, community, family, but you're also helping them build generational wealth in some ways. And so there's a lot of joy in that. A lot of
Yeah.
joy in that.
Yeah, and the investment side is interesting because some financial experts say, well, it's not the very best investment for a young person to make. What they don't understand is those of us, the 99% that are not experts in finance, just the required automated paying towards this asset that grows in value,
Mm.
just the forced discipline, the legally forced discipline is so valuable to put someone in
Yes,
that situation. Yeah, it's really
for sure.
tremendous. And I don't think a year goes by still after decades and decades of my father passing where someone doesn't say, hey, your dad sold me our family home. We sure loved that decision. And it's really a big deal. My brother Rich is Regal Homes. He builds homes. And he experiences the same thing. He experiences people in a new stage of life getting a place to be. It's such an essential part of life.
Hmm.
So it's beautiful. What was the hardest part? And before you tell me about the challenge, tell me about getting into real estate. Why did you get into real estate?
So I grew up on a farm, as I mentioned earlier, but I knew I was not a farmer. It just wasn't in my DNA. I was not going to be a farmer, and I always wanted to be in sales. In fact, I have had this idea of being in clothing sales,
Uh,
um, which is kind of weird coming from a little small town, a cowboy town where fashion wasn't really a big deal. But, anyways, I had that in the back of my head. As I ended up in the Vancouver area, I went through college, and then I was working in construction, which it was not what I wanted to do, but it was an easy job to get. And then I got what I thought was, oh, this is so awesome. I actually did get a part-time job in a clothing store,
hmm,
and I started to test my sales skills. And I thought, wow, I really like this. And from there, I moved to a sporting goods store, which I just fell in love with because I was into all kinds of sports. And every day it was like it was Christmas, right? A new box of whatever had come in, and we'd rip it open and I go, ooh, I'm taking one of those home. So I got into managing a sports shop for a family that owned a number of stores, and really found sales being so me. I was so um, attached to it. It was the authentic Randy coming out, and then I had a good friend that said, you know, you're really good at this, but boy, do you want to make some real money? And I said, well, of course I want to make some real money. He said, well, why don't you come and join me in real estate? And so that's what I did. Now, did I know it was going to be as hard as it was? No. But did I know it was going to be as lucrative as it could be? I didn't know that either. And so it was an amazing experience, very challenging to begin with. But again, that's what makes everything good. It's got to be challenging. It's got to be difficult. It's got to be hard. Otherwise, everybody would do it. And you wouldn't really appreciate it on the other end. So.
I gotta just ask this. It's a random question, seemingly, but it's in my memory. Going into my dad's different offices, he had a couple of different offices where he ended up working as he started this brand new career at the end of his life. And so when you went to work there, what are we talking about? Are we talking about a wood desk in a little office? Are we talking about a gorgeous giant building with lots of realtors?
Yeah.
Or where did you go?
Yeah, well, that was interesting. It was one of the stronger offices in town. It was a boutique office. There's about 30 agents in this office. It was a pretty nice office, and I felt like, wow, I really stepped up. I went from being a sports shop manager to, wearing a suit every day and being in this pretty cool environment of these, all these business people. I thought, um, but I learned very early on that not many of them were that committed.
Mm,
Not many were that committed to their craft.
mm.
They said they were, but they didn't show it. And coming as a newbie, I was watching everybody trying to learn from them because I thought, well, gosh, these are the pros. Yet I only found about 2 or 3 real pros in that office out of 30.
Yeah.
That was the interesting thing. And so even the owner manager said, Randy, I want you to pay attention to this person, this person, this person. That's it. Nobody else. If you're going to have eyes on somebody, these are the 3 people and nobody else.
3 out of
And I
30.
3 out of 30. And I didn't understand that out of the gate, but it didn't take me very long to realize, yes, there was a lot of talk, a lot of I'm doing this, but they weren't doing it. And so, believe it or not, I doubled my income in the first 6 months. So I started in May of,
Hmm.
of 1992, just a little while ago. And I doubled my income from the store and thought I'd died and gone to heaven.
Yeah.
Well, the next year, now I had this momentum, this confidence. I was the number one agent in that office in my very first full year.
Wow.
Yeah. It took me a little time to get it going, but I have to also remind everybody that when I started, guess who was knocking at my door? The bank. The bank was ready to foreclose on my property because I was behind in payments. My wife worked at that bank a couple of years before that, and she would go in every week and beg the manager, just hold on, just hold on. Randy's working his tail off and he's got business coming in. Just give us another 2 weeks, another 2 weeks, another 2 weeks. And of course, we found our way out of that and have, carved up quite a strong financial life for ourselves.
Well, give me a little more depth on the feelings and the thoughts you have when people say I'm foreclosing on your house and you're out there selling, and your wife, probably pretty young at that point, is scratching her head saying, are you pulling your half of the load? Tell me about that.
Early, right out of the gate, we said to each other, this is a team effort. You're going to take care of everything at home, including whatever the bank wants to know. And I'm just going to go and work as hard as I can, helping people find and sell real estate. My only why back then was, how do I help somebody buy a house today?
Mm.
That was my only why. And and we just had this understanding. In fact, she shielded me from some of that talk from the bank manager. She told me, once we found our way out of that situation, she said, Randy, I'm not sure you're aware of this, but I was at that bank every week convincing that manager to hang tight.
Mm.
So,
Good woman.
oh man, we've been married 38 years.
Wow.
I've married way, way up. Let me tell you, I married way up.
That's great. Great life partner and wife. Um, it really reminds me of something else too. You talked about how difficult it was, and as you're starting this career and you hit number one, you didn't just snap your fingers. So I want to dig into that a little bit, but I also want to just set it up for the audience. Like, again, not many real estate agents listen to this. Admittedly, today they're going to all listen to me next month after you're on, but all of us get in a situation in work like you did with the 30 people. And it takes someone, and I think today it's you and me for this audience, to say the whole thing is not the set of expectations and the perspective you need to have. When you get into a work situation, you can create your own perspective and your own approach to things and focus where you need to focus. There's so many people that get a job, and the culture and the surroundings and the norms, they just think, I do this and I have to limit it to this and I have to perform like this, instead of just breaking out of that culture and elevating it by being the one that says, we're doing this other thing that's better, and we're doing this other thing that's better. And you know what? I don't see it that way. I see people out there that are customers. I don't see customers. I see people. I see families. I'm going to behave in a different, totally radical sort of way because it's the right thing to do. It's not the corporate culture that's right. It's what is right and commercial and fulfilling. And I think that person shook you by the shoulders and did that. But getting to be number one wasn't just snapping your fingers. So tell us about that.
Absolutely not. And this is something, and this is not for just real estate agents. This is for all people that are entrepreneurs. If you're an entrepreneur, you always have to think, wake up in the morning. This is what I do every morning. What is the bottleneck in my business today? Right now, what is the bottleneck that's holding me back from being productive? And I'm going to say production solves all problems. Sales solve all problems. Not all problems, but almost all problems.
Yeah.
So what is the bottleneck that is causing your business not to succeed today? What is that? Is it people? Is it sales? Is it leads? What is it? And so you need to solve that bottleneck right out of the gate. The other thing I think is really important is that most people are not very consistent with who they are, what they do, and how often they do it. And so I have a thought and a saying in my world. I call it GoPro. And of course, the GoPro cameras.
Yeah.
What if you, and this is really important for entrepreneurs, because we don't have somebody we are managed by. We manage ourselves.
Yeah.
Which can be great, but in most cases it's not so good. So what if you wore a body cam or a GoPro cam, and your clients or your consumers, your customers could see what you're doing every day or every minute of the day? Would they go, gosh, I'm so proud of working with this individual, or I'm so proud of this man's product that I have to buy his product? Would they be impressed with that? Think about that.
Yeah.
If somebody could see every movement that you did, would they be impressed with that and say, you're my man, you're my gal, you're my business?
Wow. That's a great thought. Even in a simpler version, it's a powerful idea. Like we all, in fact, statistically, I'm saying this as though it's all of us, but it's the majority of people have a very difficult time with some of their bosses. It's just how it is. And we don't think we get enough time from them. We don't get enough direction. They don't speak clearly. They ramble on. They take too much time. They take too little time. We never see them in the office. Whatever it is, we have a whole host of complaints. And I guess one of the different versions you're saying is point that mirror or the camera at yourself and be the boss
Be the
and
boss.
be the boss that you want to love, not leave. And that's a really powerful thing. The other thing that's really interesting about what you're saying is I've never thought of the personal work life in terms of the theory of constraints. The theory of constraints is a competitor to lean, which is just a slimming down of operations and activity. And the theory of constraints is a whole science, books, library of books about getting rid of the constraint. And it's not all 100, it's the one, the worst one. And you're saying
The
it's
one
a
thing.
synonym of bottleneck. It's the exact same thing. Find it in your work life in that day and get rid of it. And that week, get rid of it. That quarter, get rid of it. It's beautiful. Beautiful.
The other thing I think is really important is holding yourself accountable, and that's in life, that's in business. And one of the things that I built for my team and people I lead is I have a daily accountability checklist,
Mm-hmm.
and I even send it to myself. I built it really for myself, and I realized how powerful it was. And then I said, everybody in my world needs to have this. So it's morning routine, it's evening rituals, it's reflection, and then it's the body of the work that you need to get done during the day, and just how it motivates you. And you get scored on a daily basis. And I'm not saying you have to win every day, but it's the sum of what you do over a week, over a month, over a year. And there's 110 points per day that you can get on this daily accountability checklist. And so, like there's some days that you're going to hit 40. There's some days you're going to hit 50. There's some days that you're going to hit 60, just depending on, the activity that's happening in the day. And this is really related to real estate and realtors. So there's production as far as, did you get an accepted offer? Did you put a firm deal together? Did you go on a listing appointment? But what I want to do is just help people set a standard. See, we
Yeah.
need standards.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it sounds very analogous to if you go into not either telemarketing for sure, but that's not what I was going to say. I was going to say even in a corporate setting, an outbound desk where you have a bunch of agents doing outbound calling, or the ones that are doing the inbound calling from the leads on the internet. They're doing metrics. They're doing them every day. And it's not that they're being held to accountability in a rough, mean way every day. It's an encouraging, it's a positive, it's an exciting, it's a tempting, it's a challenging sort of way. And it's a really powerful thing. It's another thing it makes me think of. It's a really obvious thought, but I love this thought that we have some artificial periods that we as humans have created, like the quarter. And the businesses, even small ones, and maybe because of the government's tax system or whatever it is, we pay a lot of attention to quarters. And it's also a great amount of time for teams to accomplish something, because anything that's more complicated than an individual, it takes a little more time and the scope is bigger and you can do more. So a quarter's great. But what we don't think about enough, which is what you're highlighting, is the natural unit of effort on this planet that we live on is the day. The sun peaks up on the horizon and the firing gun goes off and you start. And it's going to go down, and it's going to be personal time and family time and hobby time when the sun goes down, and then you're going to rest. And that's the finish line for the day. And those metrics and some positive things that maybe be more subjective still can be somewhat measured and assessed. And it's a beautiful thought just to be not focused on this year whether I keep my job, but on the day and the week and shorter time frames, like you're saying, even if you're a normal employee in some random company out there.
Right. Mark, I think compression and, you know, compressing your goals and putting tight timelines is so important. And that's on a daily basis. So compression of goals. So what I do is I actually fill a jar of marbles called wannabe jar.
It's awesome.
And when I have the conversations that I need to move the needle or make changes, I move that marble to a master jar. And so every month I start with all the marbles in the wannabe jar. And you can see I've not done a very good job this month. I've not done a very good job this month because it's the
Come on,
28th
Randy,
of the
let's
month.
get going.
And I've been busy doing many other things, but compressing your goals and really being on a tight schedule. So I do that on a monthly basis, but we do that on a daily basis with my daily accountability checklist as well. So really important.
So is that kind of the I don't remember the positive version, say carrot, I guess, but it's more than a stick. It's more of a tiger and a carrot where you're saying, I don't want to be a wannabe. I don't want to be a wannabe. I'm going to move those out of that jar. Is that what the wannabe's all about? You're trying to undo your wannabe-ness?
Malcolm Gladwin talks about this in Outlier. You need to do something about 10,000 hours before you become a pro. So by moving marbles, I go from being a wannabe to a pro or to a master. And if
Uh,
I do that every month, I just get better and better. And next thing you know, I am like, you know, an all-star, whatever it is. Yeah.
it's
And by
terrific.
the way, I had this in my jar here. This is a Canadian $100 bill,
Mm.
and I write my why and my goals on money.
Huh.
And I carry this money with me all the time. And when the fear and uncertainty of doubt enters my mind, I can't do this or I can't do that, or why am I doing this? I reach into my pocket and I go, this is why I'm doing this.
Well, I hope the why has something life-oriented on it. You write on the money, too. Does it?
The why is about helping others and living a life full of adventure and helping others find it.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Before we get to, because I know you have a whole philosophy on that, I want to talk a little bit more about that. It's interesting. There's a lot of people that hang on to jobs and even get stuck. I've been stuck in a job when I was younger, and you feel like you can't leave. The security in our country, the health insurance is so expensive, et cetera, et cetera. And since going out on my own several years ago, it feels to me like there's only one thing standing. Well, there's, I guess, two things standing in the way. Is your not just your why, but a very precise, bold why that you are capable
Mm.
of really affecting in others. But
Mhm.
if you can figure that, that's a big project for a lot of people, for sure. Maybe decades or days at least. But if you can figure out why in your precise, bold way, then the only other thing that's in your way is about 10 calls a day. And you're doing it before 10 so you can take the return calls in the afternoon and the referrals. And even if you're sitting in an operational job, people in those jobs think they don't have time to do networking, or you get in a local company and you get sucked into a network of 30 people you work with instead of
Mhm.
having a discipline of saying, well, I'm a professional contributor in this world. I need to actually meet new people in new lines of work and new companies, and I need to learn broader than just in my little silo here at my job. And that's going to require you to make some calls. So it's not just about selling real estate or selling something else. It's about your career and leading your career, for sure. Don't you think?
Absolutely, absolutely. And um, a lot of people struggle with their whys, you said, Mark, but I've broken it down into four pieces. I don't know if you want me
Yeah,
to share that.
I do. Save the practical stuff for the end, but let's hear the big rocks, the four.
The why comes down to four things, I think. Number one, what makes you so excited that you can't get out of bed, you can't wait to get out of bed in the morning? What makes you come alive in the morning? What is that? Just ask yourself that. Boy, I can't wait to get up to do this. And then secondly, does it tap into your superpowers? What is your superpowers? Or what I like to call them primal powers. They're powers deep within your soul. They were put there by the creator. What are those superpowers that you have? Third, are you bringing great value to others? So, what makes you come alive? What are your superpowers? And are you helping others achieve things that they couldn't do on their own? You're supporting them in some way, shape, or form. And then the fourth thing is, what do you want to be remembered by?
Hmm.
Because there's going to be a day that you're not going to be here? What is that thing that you want to be remembered by? And so when you bring those four questions into it, your why becomes a lot more clear. And I just challenge the listener here: what makes you come alive? What are your superpowers? How is it going to help others? And what do you want to be remembered by? And here's even a bigger test: what do you want people saying about you when you leave the room? See, at the celebration of life, of course, everybody's going to say beautiful things about you. You're gone. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter
They're
anymore.
sad
But what
for
are
you. Yeah.
right? But what are they saying about you when you're alive and you walk out of the room?
Mhm.
What's the story they're telling others about you? And when you put that all together, the why is going to become very clear to you.
Yeah. Well, and just a little piece of that last one that is even just a small piece of it that's so interesting, I've never thought of, is that when you're at a party or a dinner or wherever you are, a convention, wherever you are around a group of people that are noticing that you're present, even on a Zoom, frankly, but more in person for sure, that it's not a big piece of that is reputation that's accumulated over a long period of time. But what I love what you're saying, because what about that moment? Like, what do they say about how you behaved tonight? Like, I could use that advice right now, right? I mean, if you were actively thinking, like, I don't want to be the big center of attention or life of the party. I want to help people find someone to make smile. I learned a long time ago. You ask someone how they're doing 3 times in a row, and you're going to hear some things that are really hurting in their life. And so
Mhm.
you can try to get all the attention and be the life of the party. And sometimes I slip into that mode. Or you can be the person that affects a few people that when you leave the room, just that one time, they
Yeah.
say something positive about your effect, which is so important to be as a person.
I just say, be the most interested, not the most interesting person
Yeah,
in the room.
yeah, yeah. You don't want to be the most interesting. That's great. Okay, so what I'd like to do next is I'd like to have you tell us in your later career what's been the hardest thing in your latest in your later career that you've had to face and overcome. Has there been something that's required
Hmm.
a great deal of effort or challenge?
Yeah, I've had some employees that have been with me for years and years. They've moved on. That's been a bit of a challenge at times, replacing them because you think they're irreplaceable, but they are replaceable. But you get so attached to them that's been one challenge. But one of the biggest challenges that I've had in the last, I'm going to say, last 5 years, is making uh, a non-ego decision. And that non ego decision was that I built up a large real estate team that was very successful. Um, the number one team in my marketplace for 2 decades. And so it was just given that, Randy's running this team called the Xmas Real Estate Team that is number one, number one, number one. And I had to let it go for a couple of reasons. But I didn't want to let it go because my ego was attached. My 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 who's who of who I am, I felt was attached to this team that was always going to be, the number one team in my marketplace.
Mm,
And when I transitioned to EXP, I started putting energy other places. I was former to EXP. I was at Remax for almost 20 years. And so I was putting energy elsewhere. And one of the things that I didn't want to give up was this attachment to this ego thing called the Xmas Real Estate Team. But I was putting energy elsewhere, so I was suffering a bit. And I thought, no, I'm going to keep it going, keep it going. And I burned almost $1 million trying to keep that ego alive.
mm,
I hope you all heard that. We burn money to support something that isn't real,
mm,
and that was my ego. And so I was burning money to keep this thing alive that wasn't functioning very well because I wasn't involved in it enough to make it work.
mm,
And so it just kept bleeding money, bleeding money, bleeding money. Oh, it'll be fine. Next month it'll be better month. Next quarter will be better. And at the end of the day, it was almost $1 million that I burned running that company for the sake of my ego.
Mm.
So that's been a big lesson for me, and
That is a big lesson.
it's taught me a number of things. And I need to be authentic to who I am and myself, and not let uh, an entity or something that is who I believe I am to make me up. And it's it's a little bit like our confidence, right? It supports who we are, and we have to sometimes let things go and realize that we're confident and that we're well without those things. So that's one of my biggest challenges of recent.
Yeah. Well, that's very vulnerable of you to talk about. It's true. Egos are expensive. They cost a lot of money. Um,
Hmm.
I'd like you to talk to a young person in any job, and we're gonna position this for people that are interested in revenue, which, by the way, is a lot of the CEOs in my audience. But I also have a lot of college students and recent graduates, because this is a career podcast, that are my followers and across platforms, interestingly. And I want you to give them some advice later on the steps of creating a great career. But I want you to dig into your show, Return on Life, and your philosophy more than even the show. You have this philosophy of return on life, and I think it's beautiful. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about it in more detail than we have, and be more specific about that particular thing as your crescendo and success in your career, I think. Maybe I'm wrong.
Hmm. Well, it really is a big package. It's a package. It started really when I broke my neck,
Mm.
and the different pieces that were part of that adversity stacking. And I shared this with another audience the other day. I said you almost need to pray for adversity in your life,
Wow.
because
Uh,
adversity teaches you so much and allows you to build up that resilience shield to withstand just about anything. And so, just quickly, my neck was one at 14. Then I didn't graduate. I flunked grade 12, and I did grade 12 again. I got to watch my twin brother walk across the stage
oh,
while I sat in the back of the auditorium sobbing,
oh.
sobbing. And so there's another test. And I'm going to say all of these tests are building your resilience for you to be exceptional. And so this is where that underdog DNA comes in. We're all underdogs of some sort. I believe it's the 24th chromosome. We have 23 chromosomes. I think the underdog DNA is the 24th chromosome. And that is what I was learning in all those adverse moments. Randy, come on, you can fight through this. You got this. And so anybody that's listening to this, whether you're 16, 17, 18, whether you're 68, 78, whatever, I believe that we all have the underdog DNA within us. And DNA in me, for me, is decisive next action.
Mhm.
So you know that you're in a adverse moment. What are you going to do? Are you going to like let it happen, cower? Or are you going to fight for who you are and what you believe in? And then you need to take the next
Mhm.
decisive next action to fight through that. And that brings me to return on life. And it actually started out as return on luck.
Mhm.
So, return on luck, if you go to Jim Collins' book, From Good to Great, he talks about companies that suffered bad luck, yet they were the most productive, best companies. Why? Because they got to deal with adversity. They got to fight through all of those challenging moments and fought their way through to be great, not just good, but great. And so, this concept came to me way back when I read this book, like about 15 years ago. And I thought, return on luck. I like that. Return on luck. And then over the course of those next 15 years, I started asking myself, Randy, is it really return on luck, or is it return on investment? Everything I do is always, how do I get a return on investment, return on investment? And I realized, gosh, it is really about living life.
Yeah.
It's about return on life. And so today I evaluate everything um, on what is the return on life by this act that I'm about to participate in, or this deal that I'm going to do, or this friendship that I'm creating, or this moment that is happening. What's the return on life?
It's beautiful.
And so, anybody listening, I really want you to think about that. Um, Life is short yet long, but it's shorter than it's long.
Yeah.
And as you get through life, I don't know about you, Mark, but gosh, life just seems to fly by at a quicker pace. And I think it's because I'm now 60, almost 62 years old. I realize that my life is getting very, very compressed, the remaining life. And so now I want to make sure that I get all of those things that I want, experiences, opportunities, life experiences. I want to make sure I get those. So
Yeah. You know what it reminds me of is I don't remember the source. I feel bad for not for misquoting this source, but I think it's Robert Greene and Hidden Realities or something. I can't remember who it is, but they talk about how time. We as humans on Earth feel like time is a constant and it's a thing, and out in space it's not quite the same. And Einstein figured that out, and a lot of people have figured it out. But one of the things on Earth that can be a signal to us that can't seem to break out of how we think about time is that science literally measures different time at the top of a mountain like the one behind me as they do in the valley where I live. It's different. It's just a scientific fact. And so it gives me a thought of like what you just said, as you're 17, time's pretty slow. But as you climb this mountain of life, all these adversities and challenges, and you have to pivot to the other path because you went the wrong way first, and you get to the top of the mountain, time flies, and you wanna get a return on life and do it now. I love before we get to your career advice in this last segment. I love how everything that you're talking about is urgent, probably because your young accident and some of the things you've been in. But pay attention to the day and your productivity. Pay attention to the week. Pay attention to the day and now, and pay attention to what matters most. Um, one last question I have about that, because you deal with a lot of people in your line of work, in corporations and mid-sized businesses of other types. We often call them patients and customers and clients, and you're literally dealing with people and families. So I want to ask you this before we get on to that advice, which is, in our data, we showed pretty empirically, 2 million leaders studying a couple of big studies. We showed that the most important thing to get better client results and better financial results is to order those two things correctly. The most elements that were significant to be predicted were the elements of a client outcome. There's just a lot more importance because it is what drives, as you said, the lifeblood, the revenue. It is what makes the number 2 priority. And leaders that get the money first and the client second, or the people second and the outcome second, they might have a lot of success in the short run. They don't have great success in the mid and long run. That's just the fact. And a lot of people have shown that besides me. I mean, Adam Grant has a whole book about that, give and take. But I'd like to hear your philosophy on clients and people and the ones that you serve, whether internal or external. Tell me what you think about these humans we call clients.
clients make everything go round. It's the lifeblood of your business, but it's also the lifeblood of what makes you either happy, mad, or sad. And so, you really, really need to pick your clients and they need to pick you as well. And so, if I think of when I started real estate, I was taught this, chase, convince, close, chase, convince, close, always be closing, the ABCs.
ABCs.
And I thought that doesn't really resonate with me.
Mm,
Um, Even though it works and it worked. But I thought, how do I reverse engineer this? How do I create something that is much more meaningful to them as well as to me? And so I developed this philosophy of sales for myself, which was, who am I? What is my passions? What are my superpowers? And how can I use them best to serve others? And if it's in my passion lanes, it's not going to feel like work. It's going to bring joy just because I'm in those passion lanes, whatever it may be. So, for instance, if I'm a car guy, I'll even take it crazier. If I'm a surfer dude, then I should be living in my surfer dude lane.
mm,
I should be in board shorts. I should have a surfboard with me, and that's who I should be as a real estate agent,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
And then who is my avatar? Well, my avatar is somebody that relates to a surfer dude.
Mm,
So then I build out what I would call commission rivers or commission lanes, or prospecting lanes is what most people call them. I like to call them lazy rivers. We've all been to those fun resorts where we jump in a tube and we float down the lazy river.
yeah.
Imagine if you could reverse engineer this whole process. So what I've done is I've actually reverse engineered this whole process where people would actually seek and search me out, find me, convince, close me, versus I doing the reverse. I'd rather have them come to me and be the gravitational pull versus the repulsive approach. And so that has just brought me so many amazing, amazing clients because we're made for each other. I'm in my passion lanes, I'm in my value graphic lanes. They're seeking and searching and trying to find me because I've said that I'm this person to them. And so the authentic of that creation of the two, client and agent, is magic. And referrals and building relationships beyond just a deal happens because of that. And
Mm.
it's magic.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. I'm all about that. I love that. Um, all right. We're going to give a last bonus 10 minutes to just super concise, practical advice in a career like yours, unlike yours, whatever you choose to give us. Give us your 3 to 5 steps for a recent college grad to build a career.
Well, first of all, love yourself.
Mm.
Love yourself. Know who you are. Be authentic to yourself. Don't try to pretend you're somebody you're not. Here's a really cool saying: weird is rich, normal is poor.
Mm.
I'm going to say it again. Weird is rich, normal is poor. What I mean by that is the the people that really believe and act and work as if they sometimes are kind of on the weird side, but they're the ones that actually get it and make something special out of life
Mm.
because they're living in their lane. When you're trying to be that normal person and not being authentic, but you're just trying to fit in with society, you're not really being who you are a lot of times.
Mm.
And you end up not really succeeding in life. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. You see people trying to be their own person all over society as we drive and walk around. And yet they're just copying what a big, huge segment of the population's doing instead of doing what
Right.
you're saying, which is find your individuality and your contribution for everyone else. Like be individual truly and contribute to
Yes.
as many people as you can. Scale it.
Yeah.
That's what I've got to beg you to include in these 3 to 5. I love that first one. I've got to beg you to include in that your talent orchestrating to 650. I mean, for a lot of, I've managed hundreds of people too, but it's in a corporate setting or a startup setting with a lot of money that's funded, and there's just so many advantages that you just get to do it. Someone assigns you and thinks you're great, but you kind of built and scaled, and that's got to be something. There's something in there that I don't know that you do that I want to learn late in my career. from the ground up, like 650. That's a lot of people that you're orchestrating.
Yeah, well, and it sounds like a big number, but when you break it down and you work with other leaders, that's the key, is that you're not just one and done. You're working with other leaders. And so my leadership formula is this. And again, I reverse engineer this. Um, Leadership is at the end. And if anybody walks into a room and you're in that room and they say, I'm the leader, pivot and leave that room, because that is not a true leader. But a true leader doesn't say he is a leader or she's a leader. They just come across as leaders. And so reverse engineering that, first of all, I need to be a learner. I have to be a constant learner. I need to just want to, salivate over understanding and learning other things, concepts, and ways to do it. So learning. Next, I need to allow others to leverage everything that I've learned over my now 62 years, and they just can come and take it, and I need to allow them to leverage everything out of me. And then third, I need to create legacy in their life. How can I help them be legacy builders in their lives? And then I can say, Randy, you are a true leader. So if I incorporate that into the 650 agents that's in my organization, there's going to be others that rise up that are leaders, that are other Randys. And that's how you do it. You seek and search and help other leaders do what I call that L4, that learn, leverage, legacy equals leadership. Give others that L4 approach. And next thing you know, we're 650, 750, 2,000, 10,000. And you're creating a movement by doing it this way. That's the cool thing. It's a movement. It's not just another group. It's a movement.
No wonder you're an award-winning real estate leader. It's really great stuff. Really great information for all of us, not just young people. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before we let you go? It's been so great.
Well, I just encourage everybody to know that they're born, gifted, and created for greatness. And it's within every one of us. And some of us may not know it today, but understand and know that if you've listened to this, you're here for a reason. You're here to hear a message that you are amazing and you're great and you're made for greatness, greater than you ever thought. And don't ever let anybody tell you you're not.
That's beautiful. You give that last message with the authenticity of verging on overwhelm of emotion. And I just think it's beautiful because we know you're being serious about this. It feels like to me that you've done that with as many people of the 650 and before as you can. And you're pointing at other people you don't know that are listening today saying, please believe me. And I just really think that that's valuable. I hope that they go, if they're watching on Apple or somewhere without a video, I hope they go watch the video and see how you just said that message. It's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Randy Dyck, real estate mogul and king of teams. Thank you. It's been wonderful.
Thanks, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us to get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. You've heard a little bit about the power of bold encounters and leadership. Watch on. Go to full episodes with the iconic expert interviews at markspencercook.com/podcast. And please subscribe. My site takes you directly to YouTube video and podcast versions. Please make comments. Share this with your friends. Also, reach out to us to just brainstorm your priorities, challenges, events, or how bold encounters might help. Visit windfallpartners.com. Click the Let's Talk button without obligation and reach out. I look forward to speaking. Thank you for joining us. Now, let's lead with bold encounters today.